This is Money Moves on VSiN, the sports betting network.
What's up, folks? Welcome in. It is our first official full football Friday. Very excited for it. And as you see right now, I am by myself. Jonathan Von Tobel, Stormy Buonantony on her way to Starkville, Mississippi, getting ready to stock the sidelines for Arizona State and Mississippi State. Should be a good one. Very much looking forward to what Stormy and the players have in store for us this coming weekend. But this will be the normal schedule for us here on Fridays for the rest of the regular season as we move forward into the NFL year. Stormy on the road, me by myself. We'll check in with the Stormster every once in a while. She can make it, but currently en route to Mississippi. So with that, let us not dilly and or dally and get right to it.
It's time for the top headlines and topics of the day. This is The Rundown.
Fired up not only because NFL season already underway after last night, but because college football right around the corner. Very much looking forward to this weekend. Our contest plays for myself are in for week 2. Very much looking forward to not bouncing back, but doing a little bit better. 4-3 in the first week of the Westgate Super Contest for college. A lot of interesting matchups, and later, I guess we'll call these, a lot of people like to use the term degenerate for some of the matchups that don't really get a lot of attention. I have my eye on New Mexico and Idaho State. We'll talk about that a little bit later. We don't have a lot of numbers up for that. Also part of the program today, our NFL market power ratings. Speaking of what we're going to be doing on Fridays for the rest of the regular season, love this exercise, taking a look at how the market power rates these NFL teams. It's a really fun exercise to get a sense of once the market's shaped, when we're here on Friday, we get a good sense of what the respective money has done, where these teams rate according to where the market is, and then you can compare and contrast with your own power ratings to see if you can find some value. A couple of interesting spots, including one team that was downgraded immensely from the first time we did this back in July. But we begin, much like the NFL season did, with Philadelphia and Dallas. Eagles get it done last night, outlast the Cowboys in a wild affair to start. Had everything. We had ejections, we had lightning delays, we had good quarterback play, we had Jack Collinsworth. Man, it was a great score. 24-20. Eagles get it done, do not cover. Game stays under the total, despite the fact that you had 7 first-half possessions end in points, all 7 of them, 41 total points in the first half, and yet we do not get over the total. There's a lot of different places we can go here. And I do like when we have results in the books, when we finally have, we used the term yesterday a couple of times, a data point that we can build on. This is what gets you excited because now we can talk about what we should use, what we should leave at the cutting room floor, what we should put a pin in as we move forward. But it's hard not to start with where this game started because it did have an effect on the way this went down. Jalen Carter, before the game really even begins, ejected for spitting on Dak Prescott. Now, we don't have to get into the controversy that may or maybe Dak Prescott had started that thing prior to Carter getting caught. But let's hear from Jalen Carter talking about what happened last night, what transpired, and essentially the feeling stemming from getting ejected in a very important game that the Eagles could have lost.
You know, it was a mistake that happened on my side, and, you know, it just won't happen again. So I feel bad for just my teammates and the fans out there. You know, I'm doing it for them. You know, I'm doing it for my family also. But the fans, you know, they show the most love. You heard them out there today, you know, just not being able to start the game, even finish the game is just, yeah, but we're going to get it better. It won't happen again.
This is obviously very impactful. Jalen Carter is arguably, if not absolutely, the Eagles' best defensive player. And I think there was a lot of folks that were making the argument, this is the reason why this game was so high scoring in the first half. I would argue, and this is why I wanted to start here, not only because of the impact of a guy like Carter, but this is, to me, one of the takeaways, one of the put the pin in it and let's examine this for a little bit later. With Jalen Carter out, you can make the argument that the Eagles' defense wasn't the same. But as Chris Collinsworth had pointed out multiple times in the broadcast, we've talked about this, we hit on this, the network has hit on it, anybody who has watched the NFL has hit on it. This is a new-look Eagles defense, especially on the back end. You're relying on some young guys. You're relying on some new faces at the edge rusher position and at cornerback. And one of the things that I think you're definitely writing down to spin forward with Philadelphia, to take note of, is that second corner spot for Philadelphia was a little bit of a nightmare yesterday. If you look at some of the numbers for the game coming out of it, Adoree Jackson, who got the start at the left cornerback spot, 29 passing snaps for him, 29 total in coverage, had given up 5 receptions on 7 targets for 103 yards, also got a big pass interference called against him as well. CeeDee Lamb, and this was actually, it was one of those we talked about yesterday. We'll talk about the plays from yesterday. One right with the Cowboys plus the 8.5, one wrong with George Pickens having a big game. But do we call it half right? Part of the logic was that Pickens was going to match up with Adoree Jackson a ton, and I don't think Adoree Jackson's very good at this position of corner. Well, CeeDee Lamb ate him up a vast majority of the snaps in which he matched up with him. They are in a little bit of a tough spot. Now, Jackson, of course, in the course of the contest, he suffers the concussion. You get Jacorian Bennett, the former Raider, to come in and play some snaps as well. Jacorian Bennett, in 7 snaps in coverage, gave up 3 receptions for 20 yards. He and Adoree Jackson, respectively, PFF coverage grades of 46.6, 33.6. We should even note that Quinyon Mitchell, in 40 snaps, did not play particularly well. Quinyon Mitchell got a 52.4 PFF coverage grade, gave up 4 receptions on 9 targets for 30 yards. These are just some things to put away. This is one game. So do we want to sit here and look at Philadelphia and say, well, your cornerback position is an absolute mess? I don't think so. First off, Cooper DeJean played extremely well, top-rated corner, third best coverage defender for the Philadelphia Eagles outside of a couple of linebackers. I think that there is more in store for a guy like Quinyon Mitchell, who we know played a lot better than what he did yesterday. And so if this is just a blip on the radar of a very strong season, that's not something to freak out about. But we're definitely, I think, tracking this cornerback play for Philadelphia, because this is part of, I think, what we were wondering. Would this position look a little bit different? Would the effectiveness of the position look a little bit different? And after one test, at the very least, you could say that it does. We should also know one of the things that I had brought up yesterday, and this is, again, one of those we write down, the edge positions for the Philadelphia Eagles. Thought maybe there was going to be some questions as to whether or not they were going to be effective. Would they be able to get after Dak Prescott with his new look offensive line? The answer is, I think yes to that question. 19 total pressures for these guys. Josh Uche was absolutely great. Had some pretty good pass rush snaps. Nolan Smith had 4 pressures himself in 32 pass rushing snaps. So that is something to put away as well, where maybe these edge rushers are going to be pretty solid. But it's hard for me not, and we'll get to the Friday night game coming up here momentarily as we spin these forward for both of these teams. But it's hard not to give the flowers to Dak Prescott, who was very good in this game against the Philadelphia Eagles last night. Overall, the final stat line doesn't look impressive. 21 to 34, 188 yards, 5.5 yards per attempt, no touchdowns, no interceptions. But if you look at it from the standpoint of some of the underlying metrics, very, very solid for what you got from Dak Prescott overall, but was not really helped in a game that the Cowboys could have won. Let's hear from CeeDee Lamb. Lamb, despite the fact that he had a pretty strong game, was charged with 4 drops by some outlets like PFF and others. Here's Lamb talking about those drops and what exactly happened in this game.
Man, that's terrible. Honestly, I feel like I can't point no fingers at nobody else. You know what I'm saying? And I take full accountability and everything else that come with it, because as for me as a player, I've prayed for moments like that, you know what I'm saying, and the ball to come my way. And obviously for me to not come up with it, it stings a little bit. But I will tell you, if you think I'm not coming back any times harder than this, you got another thing coming.
Well, Cowboys, we'll see if he can bounce back. They do get the New York Giants next week in week 2. And the Eagles get the Kansas City Chiefs, which is the perfect bouncing off point to get to tonight. Friday Night Lights. We get 3 games tonight, 2 in college, 1 in the pros. This is the one that'll take all of the attention for the most part. Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Los Angeles Chargers out there in Brazil. Now, the number right now, if you're looking at the market of where we're at, currently 3, juice to the favorite side where I'm sitting at circa with a total of 47.5. But the big news here is the injury report for the Los Angeles Chargers. We know that Rashawn Slater injured and not going to be available for this team. Well, a name has popped up on the injury list right now as well for this squad. Mekhi Becton, illness, has been added to the injury report. He's questionable for tonight's game against the Kansas City Chiefs. That really does obviously matter for many different reasons when you're looking at this matchup overall. The Chargers, of course, already have a missing body along the offensive line. They're also facing a very good defensive presence along the defensive interior against Kansas City. That, of course, would be Chris Jones, who was top 6 last year in terms of overall pressures in the regular season. Actually, if you include postseason as well, led the league in total pressures. either way, it's a good presence there along the interior that the Los Angeles Chargers are going to have to worry about, and it makes a big difference if Mekhi Becton is not going to play. It is a little worrisome that it is an injury that pops up to the point where now he is questionable. One would assume that he's probably going to give this thing a go and expect that he's going to try to play. But I do think that there is something here that would at least make you think about looking at Los Angeles, which when we zoom out, and we'll get to the market power ratings as well, it is pretty interesting that despite all of the questions we have, specifically along the offensive line, by the time we get to our first snap, Chargers could be down 2 offensive linemen. I think it's a thin wide receiver core as well, that the market has pretty much just stood here at this 3. There's a couple of 3s to the Kansas City side at minus 115. As we mentioned, here it's minus 120. And I get it. Rashee Rice is not going to play, so that affects what we've seen with this line. But I've been pretty adamant in talking about this in the days leading up that I do think that this is somewhat light, and we'll get into a visual representation as to why I think that is the case. But if Becton can't go tonight, market doesn't really seem to think it's too worrisome that he is questionable. But I would argue when you have this cluster injury situation, if Becton can't go, now all of a sudden we're talking about 2 backups along the offensive line for the Los Angeles Chargers against a Chiefs front 7 that I think is very formidable, has 2 very good pass rushers as well. Just mentioned Jones. Karlaftis as well can get after it too. So we will see. That is the name we are tracking in the next couple of hours leading up to kickoff for this one, whether or not that is going to be the case. Be interested to see, too. Don't think any survivor entries or many would be on this, but how about the sweat last night, huh? We were right back into this thing. Very winnable game for the Dallas Cowboys, and I don't want to be too hyperbolic, but if you want to cash my Dak Prescott Comeback Player of the Year ticket now, my man was great. All right, when we come back, let's get into these market power ratings. Really interesting. We'll talk about a team that was severely downgraded, get a look at what the betting market right now views of these NFL teams as we head into the glut of Week 1. That's when we come back here on Money Moves.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Stormy Buonantony off on the road. She is getting set to be on the sidelines for Mississippi State, Arizona State this weekend, so she is off. Back on Monday in her usual spot. We'll effort to get Stormy on here on these Fridays when she can, but currently, I believe, in the air on her way. Was already starting with the highfalutin tweets on travel and Southwest and all of these unrelatable things. So I'll have to give her crap for that when she comes back on Monday. But let's start with a little bit of news. Actually, it's perfect because it invokes one Stormy Buonantony. She is still with us in spirit. The San Francisco 49ers. Now, it's a team that her and I both have some very high thoughts on. For me, it stems more from the thought of this schedule, them being a competent enough team, well-coached enough team, that they are going to be able to take advantage of it to the point where they might be a number 1 seed in the NFC, but one that might not be power rated as high as some of these others. Well, we got some news yesterday. Christian McCaffrey, after warming up in practice, was added to the injury report, and lo and behold, looks like it is a calf issue for one Christian McCaffrey. That's obviously not very good when you're talking about the calf issues that really derailed his season last year. According to the 49ers, he's dealing with a calf issue, limited participant in Thursday's practice, was on the field doing his usual warm-up and individual drills during the roughly 20 minutes open to the reporters at the start of practice. So what this means is pretty interesting. When producer Brian Ortega and I were texting about this last night, the market didn't do anything. In fact, it didn't do anything until today, where here at Circa, the San Francisco 49ers are down to a 1-point favorite. Total is 43.5. This was 2.5 across the board last night, early this morning. So maybe some worry, some indication that there is true doubt whether or not Christian McCaffrey is going to be available here, which I think begs the question, is Christian McCaffrey at this point worth this to a point spread? And maybe this isn't just what we're seeing here. Maybe there is something else that I have missed in the reasoning why the market decided to cut this down as far as it did. But when you're talking about a running back that was coming off of an injury-riddled season and a team that just has some of the small issues that they have, I think that this was one where if the market was comfortable before this to make this 2.5, why the cut all the way down to 1? And we'll see, because when you're in this territory of like 1.5, we spoke about this and we talked about the Texas-Ohio State game. It's not that big of a leap to then flip in the other direction. So it wouldn't be shocking to see if Seattle ultimately goes off as the favorite. But big news here, as at least to the shop that I'm sitting at, there is a 1 on the board. Still plenty of 2s as well. So if you wanted to get out there, maybe add it if you're at a shop. There is a few scant shops that still charge some playable prices on teasers. If you want to go tease up Seattle before it moved too much, that's something worth noting as well. And the total sitting at 43.5 with no 42s appearing yet. So this matters obviously for the line move. It also matters for what we're going to get into now. Our market power ratings for week 1. We'll do this every single Friday. It's a really fun exercise. And really what it does is you take the lines that we see up on the board right now, and we just extract home field from these lines, and we get a basic market power rating for where these teams stand. Now, I usually will round these up. So, so 1.5 will go to 2, depending on if it's a key number. If not, depending on where the games were bet. But I thought it'd be a little bit more fun to look at this a tiny bit more granular and look at this from a half-point perspective. If you look at people's true power ratings, you see a lot of different numbers. It's not just round basic numbers. So it gives us more of a sense. I would also say that for this exercise, I used 1.5 points for home field advantage. That has been the case in the NFL up to this point. So let's put this up here, and you can take a look visually if you're watching up at VSiN.com or YouTube TV. What you're looking at is essentially the basic power rating structure. So, for example, Ravens on a neutral, a 1 point favorite or 1 point better than the Philadelphia Eagles from what I've looking at through the market and using the futures as a little bit of a barometer of where to place these teams. So there's a couple of spots that we should know. First off, I'll direct your eyes to 83, where we have quite a few teams: Broncos, Chargers, Commanders, 49ers, Rams, and Vikings. The 49ers have obviously been knocked down a peg because of the line move that occurred a couple of hours ago. We made these right before that occurred. So you can put the 49ers a little bit farther down this list, closer to the 81.5 line or even 81 line with the Steelers, with this market downgrade and where we're at right now. But I wanted to note one thing to start here. Let's go to the very bottom of the list, on the very bottom right. The New Orleans Saints, a paltry 72 here, the lowest power-rated team in the NFL. There's really no question about it at this point right now. What I find so interesting about this is how much farther down they are than the Cleveland Browns, a team that we don't really have a ton of respect for. And I say we, it's the collective we. And it puts you in a situation where, should the Ravens be hosting some of these teams, look at that gap between these two and where we could possibly see this. Again, we're not going to see it, but it gives you a sense of how far ahead the market thinks a team like the Ravens are and how low this is. And it can't help but notice that this downgrade of the Saints occurred post-quarterback battle. If you remember back in July, we did this exercise. The Saints were the lowest rated team in the National Football League, but they were within a point of the Cleveland Browns. Now is not the case. They originally opened up as a 4.5 point favorite against the Arizona Cardinals. They're now up to 6.5, or should be dogs, and then they now are a 6.5 point underdog. So they've been downgraded quite a bit here, as you can tell. And I don't think it's an upgrade of Arizona that has caused that number to float out to that 6.5 point mark. That is a downgrade of New Orleans. So clearly, the New Orleans Saints, 72, the lowest rated team by the market at this point right now. So how does this exercise work? Let's open this back up and show this one more time, give you a sense of what I'm looking at here. Let's start with a team near and dear to my heart. And Brian Ortega, don't get mad. We're going to bring up the Indianapolis Colts in the Dolphins game. I won't be sarcastic about this, but this is what I'm talking about. On the 80 line, you have the Bears, the Cardinals, the Dolphins, and the Patriots. Well, the Dolphins right now in a matchup with the Indianapolis Colts, the market across the board is at pick. So if we're using 1.5 for home field, that would mean the Dolphins are about 1.5 points better on a neutral field than the Indianapolis Colts. That's why you see the Colts down there at 78.5. 78.5 plus 1.5, that equals 80. So you see the difference there. So for me, as somebody who has his own measure of these teams, to put the Colts that far, first off, away from the Dolphins, a team that I am low on, I think is pretty extreme. I would also say to put the Colts on a line similar to that of, Falcons, Giants, just ahead of Jets, Panthers, maybe only 1.5 to 2 points better than a team like the Titans. I think this is a roster that is much more talented and deserving of a higher power rating than that. So very basic exercise. That would lead me to playing the Indianapolis Colts in a pick against the Miami Dolphins, two teams that I believe to be more equals with one another. And yet the market right now is spitting out that this is not the case and that Miami is clearly the better team. So this is really how you go through this and make this work when you're talking about using market power ratings. And the cool part of this exercise is doing it from week to week and finding out where exactly some of these teams are and where exactly they are from a week-to-week basis and how they get upgraded on a week-to-week basis and finding some of the discrepancies that are in there. The other, I think, interesting aspect of this as we stand right now is something that we talked about yesterday with Stormy when she was here, when it came to Lions and Packers. As it stands right now, Detroit and Green Bay, about a 2-point spread with Green Bay at home, total of 47.5. The difference between these two teams is negligible. You can see it right here. 84 line for the Green Bay Packers, 83.5 for the Detroit Lions, a half-point difference on a neutral, a near pick at this point right now. What I'm going to be curious about is once we start to see the full-fledged nature of the Lions, where they ultimately end up on the scale with so many questions when you're talking about play calling, defensive coordinator, what Jared Goff looks like, the changes along the offensive line. That was one of the couplets that stuck out to me as well. And then we'll bring some, I guess you'll say, some visuality, that's not a real word, to the Chargers and the Chiefs, so what I'm speaking about here. You can see the Chargers there on the 83 line, along with the Broncos, the Commanders, the 49ers, the Rams, and the Vikings. This is the easiest thing that we can do because they're a 3-point dog on a neutral, so it's pretty simple. That is a neutral difference according to the market between these two teams. I don't think the Chargers, and this is the thing that I've been saying a couple of times now, I don't think the Chargers should be that high. I don't think they rate that high. I think this is a team that should be closer to that Texans mark when you're talking about an 81.5 on a neutral with that team. I don't think that there would be a surprise if you call those two teams a pick, nearly an identical team to that team. Excuse me. Not that big of a difference by my measure to a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers. And yet, according to the betting market, if we look at it at this point right now, the Steelers are on the 81 line, yet the Chargers are on an 83. That's too big of a difference for me. I think this Chargers team should be knocked down a peg from a ratings standpoint. Now, you can make the argument that maybe the Chiefs should be a little bit lower, but I don't think that's the case. Making them near equals with the Bills, I think makes sense. Putting them at line just ahead of the Green Bay Packers, considering what they can be, especially on defense, I think the Chiefs are accurately rated. That would mean that the difference has to be that the Chargers are too high. Thus, that leads me to Chiefs tonight at -3, I think is a cheap play. And then we get into the minutia of whether or not Mekhi Becton is going to play. So, again, it's a really simple exercise when you really look at it, but it gives you a good sense, and it allows you to visualize this and put it next to your own ratings and where you're going to rate some of these teams. Titans are also an interesting one as well, but we'll have more on this as we go. The NFL season, though, officially underway, so make sure you're ready. The edge goes to those with the best data, and we've got some for you. VSiN Pro delivers real-time DraftKings and Circa betting splits, so you can see where the public and sharps are putting their money. You can check out everything we have to offer as an introductory offer at vsin.com/subscribe. You get everything we do, the daily best bets, the betting splits data, full access to all of our tools. I'll always stress that my favorite tool that we have, NBA and NFL, is our player prop analyzer. Absolutely tremendous to use. So go check it out now and sign up for as little as $9.99 at vsin.com/subscribe. When we come back, our first of many wonderful guests today, Will Hill, will be with us. Can't wait to dive into a couple of matchups, including one that's on the move. The Falcons, are they live against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Well, if you're tired of hearing me bloviate, we have a special guest for you, so you don't have to listen to me the whole time. Let's head out to the Progressive Guest Line and start right away with Will Hill, host of the Should Have Bet More podcast. I can say that now, right? I heard that this is a new part of what is seemingly a revamped podcast lineup here at the Vegas Stats and Information Network.
Absolutely. I don't think I got a text from you saying, hey, I listened to the podcast. I enjoyed it. All of those things. Subscribed, left a review. You kind of 0 for 3, 0 for 4 there. But yes, it's back. Happy to be back. Glad to be doing it. It's been a lot of fun. So wherever you get your podcast, vsin.com/podcasts, you know the drill. But it is back. Mitch Moss on today. Had John Jastrzemski the other day. So it's been fun.
When was the last time you listened to Harvard Handicappers?
Basketball season?
It hasn't existed for almost a year now, but, see, that's a test. You didn't even know.
That's the last time I listened to it. I don't know.
You didn't even know. All right, so with Will Hill here, I wanted to get your thoughts on a couple of these games. I saw on social media that a gathering of the Mega Minds on the Megapod with Gil Alexander all shared the sentiment when it came to this big NFC South matchup between the Bucs and the Falcons. We're starting to see some ones pop up offshore, so it would seem the market is in agreement with all you geniuses.
Yeah, you know how that goes when everyone's on the same game. I thought this at 2.5. I thought just, this game should be a pick 'em, so I grabbed the 2.5. Obviously, not like a huge key number between 1.5, 2. All these points matter. Not that they matter equally, but I just think two pretty equal teams. I'll take the home team. I'll take the points. So I guess point now singular. The Falcons won both these games last year in this matchup. They went 2-0, and that's with Cousins. And I think Cousins, look, we saw at the end of the year, he's pretty much washed. I think Penix is got more of a live arm, is just probably better at this stage of his career than Cousins is at this stage of his career. So again, home team, I think home fields are more valuable week one. I don't know if I can really prove that. Probably have to go through these seasons, but fans are excited, enthusiastic. That's a loud building to begin with. So and I think there's some regression with Tampa Bay. Our buddy Cleve TA did a good job of laying that out, and Gil kind of reiterated that with, field goal defense. Their opponents made their field goals, missed their field goals against them. Tampa made a lot of their field goals, things like that. But toss-up game, I'll take the home team here. I think Atlanta wins the game. And plus, Tampa's kind of banged up right now.
Yes, and so I think I said this in some sort of Twitter feed in which I was tagged in, because our boys Dave Ross, Jensen Lewis are also in on the Falcons on the morning show. I actually am higher on the Bucs in the big picture, but the injury report didn't really look great. Vita Vea looks like he's actually injured, not going to play here. It's a pretty big deal when you're talking about a team that can run the ball. And I also want to note, as I did mention, offshore there are ones starting to appear, but plenty of two. So if anybody wants to tail and or still grab two with Atlanta, plenty of shops still available there. All right, real quick, let's head to another matchup that you got on your list in the National Football League. It's week one. We'll start with these and then we'll move on to the others. Head-to-head, you dare show your face. You come on this show, you tell me you didn't even know my old podcast didn't exist anymore, and then you throw out a Dolphins +1. Make your case.
And not just that, I'll throw in one more. I had some tree planting jokes I was going to make about the no-show job, so I'm really trying to get under your skin here. Look, I think the Dolphins are one of these teams the last few years. They're actually kind of predictable from a betting standpoint. They're kind of better friendly because you get them against a really good team, they can't compete. They're not on that level. You get them outdoors in cold weather. Last year against Green Bay in the cold, or Kansas City in the cold, they shrivel. They're not the same team. And when they're hurt, you can't really bet on them because they don't win games. And not just Tua is always hurt, but it's Waddle, it's Hill. Those guys are good to go. Waddle is cleared. A-Chain's good to go. Waddle healthy. Tua healthy. None of those concerns there. You're not dealing with weather. You're not dealing with an elite team. No offense, JVT. And you got a healthy Dolphins team. So I just think they got the better team here. Getting a point and a half or so. Again, it's kind of that dead zone where the number doesn't matter. You're going to have to win the game here. But I'll take the Dolphins here. I feel like it's a little bit contrarian too. I feel like a lot of enthusiasm here for the Colts, which I'm not sure I quite understand. But again, it's week one. I can certainly, we'd sit here on Monday and say, hey, we're wrong about this, and this. Certainly possible, but I'll go to bat here with Miami.
Yeah, I do think it's an interesting game from a line move standpoint. The Colts were 1.5-point favorites. Daniel Jones is named the starter. I'm told he's an upgrade from the market standpoint, and yet since then it's been one direction toward Miami as we were at pick here. So there seems to be a lot of conflicting opinions. We'll see if we get back to Indianapolis. I'd venture a guess that Colts go off as a 1-point favorite. We're starting to see some shops offshore head in that direction as well. All right, Will Hill with us here on the Progressive Guest Line. Do
you like Indy? Just quickly, though, do you like your guys here?
Yeah, I do. Okay. One of the things that I keep pointing toward that I think there's a couple of things. The first is I think they are, and you didn't do this, they are thought of as being some abhorrent and below average team. Their roster is actually very good. The question has been what's going on with the quarterback position. I do not like Miami, and I don't like their secondary. Their secondary is in really rough shape. I think their cornerback room is an absolute mess. They're going to start a rookie 5th rounder at slot corner, which is going to be, I think, Josh Downs' mincemeat time. He's going to eat them up. I think there's just a lot of things that work for Indy in a matchup like this. I think they are, to use the term, sneakily adequate and more adequate than I think people are giving them credit for.
Totally reasonable take. I look at it from a Miami standpoint, like I mentioned, where you put them against these middle of the pack sort of teams. They've actually been pretty good. Remember 2 years ago, they were the 1 seed pretty deep into the season. They were, that offense was reinventing the league for a brief period. They were flirting with the 1 seed, and they had to play late in the year against Baltimore and Buffalo. And they just the bottom fell out. But I do think Miami, when they're healthy and they have their guys and they're in their environment, can be pretty good. But we'll see.
All right, let's go to Giants and Commanders. I'm really excited for this game. I have a lot of questions about both of these teams, and I think this has become actually a prevailing thought, and maybe you're in this camp as well. So this isn't unique when I say I think the Giants are actually a sneaky, solid team. I was never out on Dable. I still think he's a good coach. I think he was handed, well, now he's the greatest quarterback of all time because he's a Colt. I think he's been handed garbage at quarterback with Daniel Jones and others. But I think that this team could be really feisty in not only this spot, but throughout the year. What do you make of this situation?
I completely agree on Dable, and it was almost the worst thing for them that first year with Dable where they got in the playoffs. They probably weren't good enough to be a playoff team. They beat Minnesota, and then they fooled themselves in, all right, let's pay Daniel Jones. We'll bring back Barkley for you. Let's run it back, where really that should have been a blow it up year. So I'm with you. And just take it from Washington's standpoint. So I agree the Giants can be underrated and feisty here, although that's schedule, man. If you're betting over 5.5 wins, which I get the enthusiasm for them, that schedule is going to be really hard to get to 6 wins, no matter how underrated we think they might be. And Washington, you just look at them last year, they are a regression candidate, as a lot of people have pointed out. If you look at the quarterbacks they played, Andy Dalton, Cooper Rush, Trey Lance, Spencer Rattler, Jones twice, Pickett, you go down the line, Watson, and I mean, it's really, really bad, a good majority of their opposing schedule. And look, they were in the NFC title game last year. They won 14 games, including the 2 playoff games. The Giants had the second pick in the draft. These teams played twice. Washington won both by a combined 8 points. Both games were close. And that was a situation where the Giants were -2 in turnovers in those 2 games. So, I don't know, Commanders probably win it by a field goal or so. I think that 6 looks pretty enticing.
All right, before we move off the NFL real quick, because I do want your thoughts. You got some interesting college sides here. Long shot for rushing touchdown leader is who?
My boy, R.J. Harvey from UCF. I love him. I think he had 25 touchdowns in 12 games last year in college. Sean Payton can be tricky with these running backs and use a rotation, but they drafted him pretty high where I think he's going to go to the top here and have a lot of opportunity. That's a good offensive line. It's a good team, so they should be in some run favorable, game favorable scripts here for running. And I just think at 150 to 1, a lot of times this year, these books, they give you a free bet or a boost or anything. That's just one where you throw a little pizza money on it. Does it win? Probably not, but I don't think it should be 150 to 1 considering the situation and his ability.
All right, college football. Again, Will Hill with us going over his thoughts for the weekend that it will be in both college and the pros. We will mend fences here. Kansas taking on Missouri. Go ahead and give us the spiel, as Stormy and I both have voiced support for the Jayhawks, and I have used them as part of my 7 plays for the college football contest out here.
Yeah, I haven't bet it yet because it's 6.5. And you know what? Why bet 6.5? You might get a 7. And if it goes down to 6, it's not as big a deal as possibly getting a 7. That being said, I like Kansas here. I like the dog. I just think they are inherently underrated based on last year. I think 1-5 in close games. They lost by 2 to, I think, Kansas State. They lost by 4 to Arizona State. They lost by 3 to UNLV. I mean, they lost a lot of close games where a couple of those games flip and we look at them differently. I think they got the edge at quarterback with Jalen Daniels, who's dynamic. He's just got to, not turn the ball over. And he's looked good and they've looked good. And you could say, all right, it's Fresno State, it's Wagner, but Fresno State went on to smoke Georgia Southern. So maybe Fresno State's not terrible. I just think this is a close game. I'm very happy this rivalry is back. It's just a natural rivalry, in-state, all that. Haven't played in 14 years or so, but I think this is a very close game. Would not be shocked at all if Kansas beat them, but glad to take those points there with the Jayhawks.
All right, we got 45 seconds. I want to hear your thoughts here. San Jose State, I feel like this is – I haven't played this. It seems like a classic, exercise your demons, let out a little blood, and just beat up on a lesser team, but you don't think that's the case?
I think the opposite. That crossed my mind. But you just think Ohio State or Texas, they had all summer to prepare for Ohio State, avenge that loss. They lose the opener. I just could see them being flat here. And do they really have an appetite to win by 42 points? Maybe your way of thinking of it is the way. I just think they come out flat, a little bit sleepy, and they're happy to win the game. I don't know, 35-7 or something. I just think getting north of 5 touchdowns in this kind of spot is favorable. So I did take the points here with San Jose State. Should be a lot of fun to root for that one.
I'm sure you already do, but follow him on Twitter at @NotTheWillHill. The Should Have Been More pod, now part of a family here officially. Thanks, Will. Appreciate it as always, dude. Good luck.
All right. Appreciate having me, man. Thanks.
Except for the Dolphins. I take that back. I don't want you having luck in there. VSiN.com. Check out everything we have to offer. Will's up there. Zach Cohen's up there. He's going to join us in about 20 minutes. Chris Vaselli's going to be with us on the other side. Covers.com.
You're watching Watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
As the official horse racing partner of VSiN, First Bet is built for bettors who demand more. First Bet isn't just about placing a bet. It's about helping bettors of all levels with proprietary AI handicapping tools that provide data-driven insights to help you make smarter bets. First Bet's in-app tools give you win-play show probabilities for each runner so you can quickly and easily identify good value plays and improve your ROI. Right now, you can take advantage of their limited-time $250 sign-up offer. To claim your bonus, use promo code VSiN250 when you sign up in the First Bet app or firstbet.com. That's promo code VSiN250. All right. We continue on our journey here. Stormy Buonantony, speaking of journeys, is on her way out to Starkville to get ready to work the sidelines for Arizona State and Mississippi State. She'll be out on Fridays throughout the season as usual, but I will be your faithful guide throughout all of this. And we have a lot of smart people with us, including Chris Pacelli, who's with us now, Covers.com, going to join us weekly. Now, usually, Chris, we would be talking a little Premier League as well as some other things, but off this week for some international play. We will get to some of the angles, maybe big picture coming up here momentarily, but we do have a game tonight, and I know you've got some thoughts on it, so let's discuss. As the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be taking on the Los Angeles Chargers in Brazil, 3-point spread, juice to the favorite side of multiple spots. Mekhi Becton pops up on the injury report for the Chargers as questionable due to illness. What do you make of this one? Total is up to 47.5.
Yeah, JVT, great game to cap up start off the Friday weekend card here. Mekhi Becton appearing on the injury list is definitely big news. We're taking Justin Herbert under 32.5 pass attempts. We're getting that at -105. Basically, if the Chargers are kind of missing their two of their offensive linemen, dropping back Herbert to pass 33 plus times in a game is not probably good coaching from Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman. I think this game sets up nicely for the Chargers to possibly make an early statement and possibly beat the Chiefs for the first time since September 2021. As I mentioned, they went out and drafted Omarion Hampton in the first round. They spent some draft capital in the first round. They were able to sign Najee Harris from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Greg Roman, he's a kind of a run-heavy type of offensive coordinator. Jim Harbaugh knows the value of establishing the run early and often. And Justin Herbert, he's gone under this total of 32.5 in the last 4 meetings versus the Chiefs. If you're looking for a bit of a lower scoring game in terms of game total, this game has gone under the total in the last 2 games. I expect more of a run heavy script from the Chargers. Their wide receiver core doesn't exactly exude confidence. Keenan Allen's, pushing 33, 34. Ladd McConkey's solid. He's still a youngster. Quentin Johnson, he's had issues in the past. I just see Herbert kind of not playing hero ball, not forced to be that guy again. And the Chargers running the football as much as possible, keeping the Chiefs offense on the sideline. So we'll go under 32.5 pass attempts for Justin Herbert here.
All right, I like it. Let's stick with American football really quickly, and we're going to get to college too. But I was telling Stormy yesterday that I think the Ravens. I think I put it. I'm not afraid to say it anymore. The Ravens are the best team in the National Football League. I think the market's getting this right. I think they are a good deal better by multiple points, I would say, than Buffalo. Would you agree with that? As they have a big Sunday night matchup.
Absolutely, JVT. I think you're onto something. I'm in on the Ravens again. So I'm on the Ravens this year for the Super Bowl. That's not a hot take, obviously, considering they're among the top 3 in the betting market. But where you look at this game, Sunday Night Football, they come into this game a little bit healthier and with that chip on their shoulder based on last year's results in the playoffs. A story for another day. MVP award. I think Lamar got robbed last year for the MVP award. Josh Allen played well, but I do think Lamar Jackson was better overall for the regular season. If you look at this game, the Bills secondary is, they have plenty of issues. They already lost their rookie cornerback. They have some banged up secondary in Tre'Davious White and Christian Benford. So I do think the Ravens are the play here. I know we're kind of getting the worst of the number right now since it's jumped ship to -120 in terms of the Ravens getting the favorite status. But I think the Ravens are the better team from top to bottom. Lamar balls out. Derrick Henry does his thing running the football. And I don't think Josh Allen will have enough weapons here to keep up, especially early on in the season when, the Ravens got that chip on their shoulder for a little bit of revenge.
All right, Chris Pacelli with us again. Football Fridays. We're getting ready for the weekend that will be. Let's switch gears to college. This is a very amicable relationship up to this point, but it might get a little adversarial right now. We are going to be head-to-head here. Oklahoma taking on Michigan. It, on the surface, looked like a tough result against New Mexico. What do we make of the Sooners in this matchup as 5-point favorites?
Yeah, so we're riding with the Sooners here as 5-point home favorites. There was a lot of chatter preseason whether or not Michigan was actually going to give the reins to Bryce Underwood, right out of the gate to start the season. They chose to do so, and a win against New Mexico was kind of a good wet the feet type of game. But I'm not willing to put the cart before the horse here, if you catch my drift. I think going into Norman, a top 25, top 20 showdown here, going into Norman under the bright lights, I think this is a spot that's too big of a moment for him. We saw in week one, similar storylines. You had Arch Manning going on the road, a little bit of inexperienced quarterback going on the road and losing. Same with CJ Carr, an inexperienced quarterback for Notre Dame going on the road and losing. I just don't think Bryce Underwood and that Michigan offense have enough to keep pace with this Oklahoma offense. I like what Oklahoma can do. I think their ceiling's high on the offensive side of the ball, led by John Mateer. Obviously, if you can only dink and dunk so much. I think Michigan is a well-balanced team, but you can only dink and dunk so much. They don't have those explosive playability that Oklahoma has. And if Brent Venables wants to keep his job, he's got to win this game. He's 5-5 straight up against top 25 opponents. If they win this game, I see them doing so. I see them doing so by at least 7 points here. They could be 5-0 heading into that Texas showdown in mid-October. So I'm going to lay the points here just based on the offensive capabilities of the Sooners that they have on their home field.
All right, makes a lot of sense. Let's go to one. We'll talk about the Cy-Hawk Bowl coming up here in a little bit, but I have heard Western Kentucky get thrown out there quite a bit as some of these plays. Markets moved against them. It's up to 7.5 in a couple of spots, but there is some support out there for the Hilltoppers, and you are among those.
Yes, for sure. I like the Hilltoppers here. We're getting 7.5 points now against Toledo. If you look at what Toledo did last week against Kentucky, Kentucky's not exactly the 85 Bears reincarnated. The Toledo Rockets had just 2 points for the first 50 minutes of that game. A couple of late touchdowns kind of padded that score to make that game kind of look respectable. Western Kentucky, they can move the ball up and down the field, albeit against Sam Houston, which, is not exactly the who's who, and against an FCS team last week in North Alabama. But this team can play. They can, they've shown time and time again they can put up points. I just don't see where the Toledo Rockets are going to, get off keeping pace with this Hilltoppers offense. We're getting the hook here at 7.5 in a high-scoring game. The total's 58.5. I'll take the team that can score consistent points, and we're going to go with the road underdog here at 7.5 points, minus 110.
All right, highlight of the weekend will be Iowa State in Iowa. This is a pro Cyclones show, but this is 3.5 now, and I feel like you're going the other direction.
Yes, for sure. You're giving me the hook in a game that notoriously comes down to a field goal. 3 of the last 5 games have come down to a field goal spread. The visitors have won the last 5. I think that trend could continue this year. I'm just not seeing it with the Cyclones. I know that Rocco Beck is. He's kind of been a name in the media that's kind of been, polarizing. Is he good? Is he not good? But against Kansas State, his own lone FBS, game, he completed just 50% of passes for 183 yards. I do believe Iowa's defense is obviously a step above Kansas State and anything that South Dakota can bring their way. The Iowa Hawkeyes offensive line is stout. Iowa State's not going to be able to generate as much pressure on Gronkowski as they would like. I think you're getting the hook here. I think the Iowa Cyclones are the play, especially at 3.5 points.
All right, last 90 seconds. It is a Footy Friday, and we will have more on the Prem League as we get deeper into the season. But again, off this week, we'll just ask the open-ended questions. Some interesting names at the bottom of the table right now in the Premier League. Can we jump on any of these? We're only 3 matches in, but you see some big names in danger of relegation early on.
Yeah, for sure. So 3 games in, I'm still kind of holding out hope that Sunderland kind of falls back to the pack. Obviously, they've gotten off to a good start, 2 wins from 3 matches. They're still minus 125 to be relegated. I'm still sitting on that piece preseason. I don't think they're good enough caliber team in the Premier League to hang with the big boys. You have a Wolves side that's got 0 points through 3 games. They always find a way to pick up some pieces, especially in the January transfer window that kind of keeps them in the Premier League. So outside of Wolves or Sunderland, I would take Sunderland at minus 125 to be relegated. Wolves are paying a nice minus 120 price as well, but I think the value lies with Sunderland here. I just don't see them being able to contend long term.
All right, Chris Vasili again, covers.com at MC_Silly3 if you want to give him a follow there. Chris, awesome to talk to you as usual, man. We'll chat again next week.
Thanks, JVT. Have a good one.
You got it. Good luck this weekend, man. All right, plenty to get to here. Let's deep dive a little bit more into the ranks of college football. Ryan McIntyre, the college experience, is going to join us on the other side. He's got some thoughts. The Cy-Hawk Bowl is going to have a lot of differing opinions. We'll get some thoughts there. Really interested in his thoughts because I think he's got a side here. For 2 straight weeks, the Baylor Bears are getting bet. They failed the first test against Auburn. Is that a sign of things to come this coming weekend? Plus the big matchups were Kentucky, Ole Miss, and more. It's on the other side here on Money Moves.